Welcome to The Cutting Edge, brought to you by Schmidt Brothers Cutlery. My name is Nico Muratori. Super excited to be here today. And we're going to be joined in the chat by Chef Mary. So if we have any questions throughout class today, please put them in the chat, and we'll make sure to answer those questions. We love to have this be a conversation as class goes on. So any tips and tricks that you have with your knives and anything that you've cooked with your Schmidt Brothers set, we'd love to hear about that in the chat. So today our theme is knife skills, and we want to help you take your cooking to the next level by showing you how to use some beautiful knives from our friends at Schmidt Brothers Cutlery. We're also going to have Paulette in the chat. Paulette is from Schmidt Brothers, and so if you have any knife-specific related questions, Paulette's going to be able to answer those, as well as putting in some links there of where to find the beautiful knives that we're going to be using today in class. So today we're making a chicken satay with green papaya salad, and so super classic dish, really lots of knife work, and so that's why this is a wonderful class for us to do for our Cutting Edge series. It's a really, it's a simple dish, but we're going to transform these ingredients into something that is really bright, beautiful, vibrant, colorful, a little bit of heat, awesome pops of acid, and just a really, really delicious dish. And so just a brief overview of how class is going to go today. We are first going to start with our chicken. We're going to get that marinated, do some knife work. We'll talk about the knives that we're going to use in class today. And then we'll roll into making a peanut sauce that's going to go with our chicken satay, and we'll finish up with a green papaya salad that maybe you've had before at a restaurant. We're going to show you how to make it today at home. Really delicious. Practice those knife skills and do all the knife cuts by hand. No mandolins, no slicers, no nothing. And so in the Cutting Edge Club, we want to show you knife skills. We want to show you how to use and make the most out of your Schmidt Brothers Cutlery set. And so if you're not yet a customer and not yet using Schmidt Brothers knives, we're going to have some links in the chat so you can get your own set at home and start using these amazing knives to start practicing with at home. At Schmidt Brothers, our passion is we're on a mission to sharpen your passion for cooking. And the set we're using today is going to be the Heritage 12-piece set. And so I have that over here to my left. And I'm just going to talk you through a few of the knives that we're going to use today, as well as what's included in the set. And so first and foremost, we have an awesome chef's knife. This is going to be a really, really key knife that we're going to use today. We'll use this for a variety of different knife cuts, but primarily when we're doing some mincing work, we'll be using this 8-inch chef's knife right here. Really awesome, really nice heavy-duty knife. Put that one aside here for a second. We're also going to be using our Santoku knife. A little bit smaller, really what I consider to be the vegetable master. This is the knife that I love to use when I'm doing a lot of vegetable cuts. We'll utilize that today when we're working with our green papaya, our vegetables, cucumbers, carrots, etc. Put that one over here. And then the last one we're going to use is actually a nice little paring knife here. And so this is just a small little guy, but still super sharp, very versatile, and nice for protein. And so we'll start off with that when we're cutting our chicken here. I'm going to use my nice little paring knife for that. But also available in the set, we have a bread knife, nice serrated bread knife. Then we have a slicer. This is a long 8.5-inch slicer, so really nice if you're doing a roast and you want to slice something super thin. You're cutting up some fish. This would be a great knife to utilize for that. And then we have a really fun, this is actually a really interesting one that I enjoy a lot. This is a serrated utility knife. And so this is a smaller knife, but having a nice utility knife in the kitchen is one of my favorite knives to use. And having that little serration on this makes it super sharp and makes it more flexible than a standard blade. And so this something that's nice to kind of have on the counter all the time, whether you're just slicing up, a lime to squeeze on top of this dish, or if you want to use this for cutting a smaller piece of bread, even protein, I think you could utilize this knife. And so really nice serrated little utility knife. And then we also have 4 beautiful steak knives, non-serrated. So these are just like really sharp, proper steak knives. And so not just for steak at home, these can be used for any other protein or any other dish at home that might require a knife when you're serving dinner. So this is all part of the 12-piece Heritage set, and we'll have it right over here, and we'll kind of keep talking about those knives throughout class as we are utilizing different knives as we go today. Awesome.
Hi, everybody. We have an active chat today. Folks are excited to hear from you, Chef Nico, and to get into the wide world of knives. This is going to be a lot of information coming at us, but rest assured, we have a lot of things to chop today. So we're going to have lots of examples from Chef Nico, and any questions, feel free to ask, throw them in the chat, and we'll get right to them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we do have quite a bit of work today, so we're going to jump right into it. I'm just going to put a glove on here today so I don't have to keep washing my hands behind you. So we're going to get started with our chicken satay, and we're going to start with our marinade. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do some knife work on our ginger and garlic. And so in the recipe, you'll notice that we have just a few cloves of garlic. I think we only call for about 2, but I have very small ones, so we're going to do 4 little cloves of garlic today, and a nice piece of ginger. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to mince these. So I'm going to go and grab my chef knife here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting my garlic and ginger into planks. And what that means, I'm just going to slice through once this direction, utilizing a little bit of that nice sharp edge of this knife, and come through and just cut everything into planks. And as soon as I finish the garlic, I just want to talk about how to hold a knife. And so right there, if folks were watching, when I hold a knife, I'm not holding the handle of the knife. I'm not putting a finger on top of it. What I'm doing is really holding the knife I'm almost choking up on the blade just a little bit. And what that means is I have my pointer finger and my thumb actually on the blade. And so what this does, we'll kind of show from both directions here, is choking up on the blade is really the best way to describe it. But as you notice down here, we have this nice little hook almost where your middle finger can kind of slide into on the Schmidt Brothers knives. And so this is a really great knife to kind of practice this grip and this hold on the knife. And so when you have a knife in your hands like this, what it really does is make it an extension of your hand. It's not just a tool that's in your hand. This really becomes an extension of your hand, and you're able to have a lot of control over it. And so when I'm holding a knife, especially when I'm doing all of this slicing work, any mincing, this is how I'm always holding my knife. And so for those home cooks, you know, this might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's one of these skills that any professional chef that you watch is going to be holding a knife this way. And when I first started cooking, it was really uncomfortable for the first, few months of trying to hold a knife like this. And then it really became second nature and becomes very comfortable. And so if you haven't tried it yet, I encourage you to try. Give that little choke up on the knife, get that pointer finger and thumb on the knife, and that grip will really help you feel just a little bit more stable in your knife cuts. So we got through the garlic there. Next, we're just going to go into our little piece of ginger here and do the same thing. We're just going to cut this into some nice little planks first. And that's that. So next up, we're going to come through, and now we're going to cut these into little matchsticks, like a fine julienne. And if you've never heard the term julienne before, we will be using that knife technique and that knife cut when we do our papaya, our cucumbers, and our carrots. And so we'll go back and talk about it. But really, julienne is like a matchstick, sometimes very fine, sometimes a little bit larger. And so right now, we're going to come back through and just cut all of this garlic and ginger into a nice, fine julienne, nice little matchsticks. And then what this does is it allows us to have it in these small little strips that are then ready to be diced and minced. So I'm just going to kind of continue to come through all the garlic and ginger, make sure I get it off the knife. And then what I'll do is I'll just turn it all kind of the other direction so I can bring the knife through one more time and then really get this to a nice place where it's minced. So last time here, just coming through as finely as possible, chopping it through. Another little tip that I like to talk about when we do knife skills is discussing where to put your hands when you're holding a piece of vegetable or something that you're trying to slice finely. And a lot of people are a little shy. They want to keep their hands farther away from it. Totally fine. But something to practice, again, and something we do in professional kitchens, is we like to use our fingers as a guide. And what I do is I turn my knuckles underneath a little bit. And what this allows me to do is use that leading knuckle as a little bit of a place where I can kind of rest the knife against and not worry about cutting myself. And this way I'm holding all of the food that I'm chopping kind of with my, my pinky, my thumb, and my ring finger. And then I'm using that middle finger as the guide. And as you notice, because you're curling your knuckles under, I'm never going to actually cut into a finger there. So we're going to have this nice, kind of a guide that's helping us along here as we chop.
Yeah, I've always been so fearful of cutting my knuckles, and I have been the recipient of several cuts in this way because I've been like, yeah, it's making a big stew. I'm just going to make this mirepoix. It's going to be just chop, 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 chop. And then, there's a little blood in there. And seeing the correct way to finally chop. I mean, look at that go. That's professional chef stuff. And you can really achieve this with these knives. You're ready to go. That ergonomic guide for your finger is a huge difference from my knives
really
at home
nice.
versus these.
It makes for a really comfortable plate. Like you almost want to choke up on the blade when you have that nice ergonomic handle. And it's really a nice place that my middle finger kind of just sits right there, kind of underneath. And so it's pretty perfect for when you're holding that knife and gripping it. Awesome. So we've got our ginger and garlic minced down, and then what I want to show you next is something you should never do with your knife. And what you should never do with your knife is take it and scrape the product that you just chopped and put it into a bowl. You don't want to take that nice edge, that nice sharpened edge, and slide it along either a wooden, bamboo, plastic cutting board. What you're going to do is just start to damage the knife and make it dull. And so a tip I always love to share in class, if you've ever been to one of my classes before, is I like to use bench scrapers and bowl scrapers as a kind of a utility tool that I always have on my station when I'm cooking, whether it's at home, whether it's in a restaurant, whether it's for teaching. I always have one of these close by, because what this allows me to do is really kind of just scrape up all of that nice minced ginger and garlic and go right into my bowl here and start building my marinade. It's also a nice way to just scrape down your work surface, and this is so much nicer than taking the back of your knife or even that blade side and trying to kind of comb over and clean your cutting board. Utilizing something like a scraper is really kind of essential to keeping your knives in good shape at home. And so you'd never see me using that knife. I'm always going to be using a scraper, a bowl scraper, or something like this. And so this is an awesome one for Schmidt Bros that they're going to have available soon. And so really, really great tool to have in the kitchen. So let's build our marinade. We've got all of our ginger and garlic in here. And the next thing we're going to do is go in with all of our ingredients. And so we've got a little bit of, got our soy sauce here. Get that into there. We got some fish sauce. Fish sauce is going to give us a little bit of a salty tang with a little bit of that seafood flavor, but not too strong. Some brown sugar, a little bit of sweetness is going to help kind of counteract the sourness that's coming from the rest of the dish. And then we just have a little bit of vegetable oil here, just about a tablespoon. And then we got some spices. And so we have a few different spices here today. We're going to utilize some ground black pepper and cinnamon. So we're going to kind of get the high notes from the cinnamon, if you will, where you get that nice spice that comes through the entire dish but isn't too overpowering. And then we have some deeper notes as well, where we have some coriander, some cumin, and turmeric. And so the combination of these 5 spices is really it's a lovely, mild, yet delicious spicing. And so it's only a teaspoon or a half teaspoon of each of these. So it's really not too much of the spices, but just enough to really make it sing. So I'm just going to take a whisk, and we're going to mix this marinade up. Awesome. It smells delicious. That ginger and garlic really come through, and then you can see that the texture of it's not too thick, and it's also not too thin. So really like the perfect amount of marinade for our 1 pound of chicken that we're going to be doing here today. So just going to set this back aside, and we'll move on to doing our chicken thighs. Just going to put some gloves on. And with our chicken thighs, we're working with the boneless, skinless chicken thigh today. It's a really nice cut of chicken to use when you're grilling. Oftentimes with skin on chicken, bone in chicken, it's really hard to debone it and make something like a skewer for this. And so I gravitate towards boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I think it's a great option. And we're going to switch knives now, and we're going to go into our little paring knife. I love using a sharp paring knife for something like cubing chicken. One of the reasons I like using a smaller knife like this is because these are small pieces of chicken, right? This isn't a giant piece of protein. We're not cutting up a whole salmon or a whole chicken or something like that. We only really need a small knife to make these little cubes. And so I'm going to take this, and we're going to work with about 1-inch sized cubes here, and just kind of go through the chicken thighs, cut them into little pieces, and then pop them into that marinade. Any good questions in the chat yet, Mary?
Not so far. I mean, they're all great questions, but we haven't really gotten quite into what I know we're going to be talking about when we get to our salad. I just know there's going to be so many chopping knife questions.
Absolutely.
I wonder, and Paulette's in the chat. Hi, Paulette. So if we need to sub, garlic, ginger, we can go ahead and use frozen garlic and ginger.
Yeah, I think if you don't have the fresh available, utilizing frozen packages of that totally is an okay time to use your frozen garlic and ginger. I think that because we're cooking this, it's really going to be the same taste at the end of the day. So yeah, those packets of frozen garlic and ginger are awesome to have in your freezer. I often have both of them, especially if we're making a stir fry or something like that. It's really nice to just take them, pop them out, and they're defrosted within like 10 minutes because they're those really nice little small cubes.
Totally.
They work really well, and the flavor is far better than any kind of garlic that's going to come out of a jar. We call it jarlic, and we say that's big no-no.
No, if it's flash frozen, it's good to go.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a much different product because it's actually, it is the exact same thing, just frozen, as opposed to any of the jarred stuff has preservatives and just doesn't have, not the same flavor and not the same texture either.
Definitely. And let's see, a couple people were asking about sharpening knives, and I know that Paulette just put a link to a knife sharpener that Schmidt Brothers Cutlery sells. How often do you sharpen your knives at home, Nico?
So if you want to do, the full professional style, use whetstones. It's definitely a more technique-driven way to sharpen your knives, but luckily the Heritage 12-piece set comes with a drag-through sharpener, and these are really nice sharpeners that you can use for sort of an a la minute, quick fix sharpen. And then if you want to do kind of a more official sharpening, either bring them into somewhere who's going to sharpen them on some whetstones, or learn how to do it yourself at home. It's definitely a journey worth embarking on, but take some time to get used to that technique and to learn. And I'm still learning after 16 years of professional cooking, still learning about how to sharpen my knives.
Love it. Great questions.
Just going to bring this over to the sink here, get rid of our chicken cutting board, and move on to mixing up the marinade here. So we've got our chicken into the bowl, and next thing we're going to do is just mix up the marinade, coat the chicken, make sure we feel like it's kind of gotten all over the surface, all over these little cubes, and then we are going to pop this in the fridge for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes to an hour is really all you need for this, but this is also something you could do in the morning if you have a long day of work and you know that you want to make this dish when you come home. You could do this in the morning, pop it in the fridge, and it will be extra delicious from the couple extra hours of marinating. And so for the purposes of today, I actually did a batch ahead of time, marinated it before class, just so we can show you the skewering process next as we go. So this is ready to go in the fridge. I'm going to go grab my chicken that I did earlier. All right, here we go.
TV magic. We love to see it.
With the magic of TV, we have some beautifully marinated chicken.
Just like that.
Just like that. And one thing that I noticed when I first take a look at it is I noticed that the color has changed ever so slightly, and that's from the turmeric. It really does provide a really lovely kind of yellow color to our chicken, and it also brings in a little bit of flavor as well, but really just that half teaspoon of turmeric goes a long way and looks beautiful. Smells amazing. I almost get a little more of the spices now than the garlic and the ginger, I think, because that's mellowed out a little bit. And the next thing we're going to do for our satay is we're going to get ready and skewer these. And so I just have some bamboo skewers here, just little guys about 6 inches. And we're going to utilize those for skewering our chicken. So skewering chicken, folks often think, oh yeah, you just pop it right on there, no problem. I actually like to teach a different technique when we're skewering, which is to put it through in 2 places. And so chicken thighs, because they're made up of kind of multiple muscles, connective tissue, some fat in between, I actually like to almost fold it over itself and then poke the skewer through and skewer it in 2 places. And so that way I'm not getting any chicken that's falling off my skewers. This is especially important with larger pieces of chicken. This is, these are much smaller, so it's okay to kind of, if they're a really solid piece, you can just go through once. But when I notice here that I have like this little secondary muscle, I'm going to go through that one first and then continue poking. So this way they stay on the skewers really nicely and they don't fall off or kind of have that like flat back and forth texture. Mary, what do we got in the chat?
We have a question in the chat. Joe, you read my mind. Do you pre-soak the bamboo skewers?
So if we are grilling outside on a fire or on a gas grill, absolutely, you need to pre-soak your skewers so they don't get wet, or excuse me, so they don't burn on the grill. But today, because we're cooking inside on a cast iron grill pan, I'm not going to soak these because I'm not worried about them catching on fire in our little pan. But when you're cooking over open fire, absolutely, you need to soak your wooden skewers. Otherwise, you're going to end up with mostly burned skewer on the outside and just a little bit holding it together. And nobody wants to eat a piece of wood, so that's never too much fun.
I've been pre-soaking my skewers in my kitchen just in case I set the whole thing on fire. That is good to know. Great question,
It's
Joe.
never a bad idea to soak them. There's nothing wrong. There's definitely nothing wrong with soaking our chicken. So we'll just kind of keep getting these onto the skewers. And each piece that is a little bit longer, those are the ones that I'm really kind of folding over and making sure, yeah, just like that, making sure that they're going to stay on our skewers as we cook them. And then also what that helps with is making sure that we have a uniform size and texture for the chicken. So if some pieces are a little bit longer than others, when we do that fold technique and kind of skewer it in 2 places, it doesn't matter. They'll end up all kind of having that exact same size once we get them on the skewer, looking like one cohesive piece of protein. So a few more to go here. Mary, do you want to tell us some fun facts about the steel and about the construction of the knives we're using today?
I would love to. And in this endeavor, I know Paulette will be my sous chef here in the chat. So our Heritage 12-piece knife set includes Indeed, 12 pieces. This includes the sharpener and the knife block. Two huge parts of having a knife set, in my opinion. The Heritage Series is made from G10 and 100% German stainless steel, which creates a bit of a heavier knife, but the home cook that wants to feel like a chef, this is a perfect feeling for you. I like to feel a little, I don't know, dramatic and glamorous in the kitchen. So this is the set. They're also dual sharped to maintain a razor sharp edge cut after cut, while the fully forged full tang construction guarantees a strong, flexible slice through any ingredient. So that full tang goes all the way through the handle, right?
Yeah, I'll show on the chef's knife here in just 1 second about what a full tang means. And so if folks are unfamiliar with that term, what it means is basically that this knife is constructed out of one piece of steel. And so what we have is, when you talk about full tang, it means that this is one large piece of steel, and so it has a really nice heft and a really nice weight to it. And it also just makes the knife a lot more durable and sturdy, as we don't have a handle that's connected to a piece of steel. There's no issue or worry about this ever coming off or breaking off, as handles sometimes pop off of cheaper knives. But so this construction in particular, it really does lend itself, like Mary was saying, to that kind of like heavier, really nice, but not burly at all. Like, it still has a really nice, it's not too thick on the top edge, but that full tang really giving it the great feel in your hand and a really nice balance point of right there on the handle.
Look at that balance. That's nice.
That's where I like my balance point to be, is kind of right where my fingers are. So when we're chopping, we feel like we kind of have equal weight on both sides of the knife.
Definitely.
Give that guy a wipe off. And all right, chicken is skewered. So we got this ready to go, and we are going to just set it aside. We'll set it aside up here for now, and then we're going to get into a little bit more of our knife work, and we'll start cooking this once we start to build our salad. We have a little bit of knife work to do ahead of time, and then we'll get into the protein cookery. So for the next step, we're going to build our peanut sauce. And so this is going to be our glaze for the chicken satay. And so it's a simple recipe, and it's probably ingredients that most of you have at home in your pantry. And but it's a delicious sauce. It's got some tang to it. It's got nice kind of fattiness from that peanut butter. And then we add a little bit of heat. There's just a pinch of sriracha, like a teaspoon of sriracha inside of my soy sauce here. We're going to bring some acid here with the lime, a little bit of brown sugar for sweetness. And this is just a wonderful recipe for an awesome and delicious peanut sauce. So first things first, peanut butter. I have about a half a cup here. I'm just going to slide that into our bowl. And if you've never made a peanut sauce before, it's something really interesting happens when you work with, whether it's peanut butter or tahini or other nut-based butters, if you will. And when you add liquid to them, sometimes they actually get thicker. And it's a really interesting and kind of confusing concept, but it's because of how much fat is present here from the nut oils and from the extra, any extra oil that's been added into peanut butter or tahini. So we're going to need to use some water to actually thin it back out. And so watch what happens when we start adding some of these ingredients in here. So let's get the brown sugar. We got our soy sauce, a little bit of sriracha there, another pinch of fish sauce for that kind of salty brininess. And then we're going to add in juice of 1 lime. Tablespoon and a half is perfect.
Nico, out of curiosity, what's your favorite type of fish sauce you like to use?
That's a great question. I really love the brand. They're called Red Boat fish sauce.
Yeah.
They make an amazing fish sauce, really delicious. Another great all-purpose fish sauce is called Three Crabs, and it comes in a big bottle. There's 3 crabs on the label.
Yep.
Hard to forget about. But I think Red Boat makes a really excellent fish sauce. So we're going to get back into a little bit of knife work here because we need to mince our garlic. And so we'll do that exact same process that we did before, where we're just going to cut this into a couple of planks. And another tip I like to give with garlic is once it gets to the point where you're worried about this possibly falling over and maybe you're getting to the small part of the garlic, I will turn it down onto that side I was just cutting. Now we have a flat plane that we're able to continue doing that slicing through, and it just makes me feel a little bit more comfortable when I'm chopping garlic, because every garlic clove is different, right? Shapes, sizes, texture, etc. And so doing that, kind of flip it onto that flat cut side makes you feel like a little more comfortable, not going to cut yourself, and now we can come through and cut those into the little...
This top-down view is amazing to see that knuckle guide you were just talking about. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to cut myself, Gotta
I don't want you to
practice
either.
what I preach here.
No.
So we got them into those kind of that fine julienne, and then let's come back through one more time and let's mince it and get it into our sauce. So remember what we said before, we're not going to use this knife. I know it's tempting. You want to take the knife and scrape it to use it to get that garlic up. We'll go back to our bench scraper here. Utilize that instead. Make sure that we get all of it off the cutting board. And then as we work, we want to make sure we just wipe down our knife. When we talk about knife care, we want to make sure that we're not leaving any sort of residue on a knife for a long period of time. We've paid a lot of money for our beautiful knives. We want to keep them in good shape. And so having anything kind of dry on there, especially garlic, is actually something I really hate having on my knife if I forget to clean it off.
Oh,
it
yeah.
It gets really sticky, and it's just kind of hard to clean off after that. And I never want to use any abrasives on my knives, as in I don't want to use stainless steel scrubbers. I want to just use a little bit of soap and water when I clean my knives. But if I leave that garlic on there and it gets stuck on the surface, it ends up being like a pretty unfortunate and it's not a very fun cleaning process. And so we've got to make sure we wipe down that knife with a wet towel after we're using it. Back to our sauce. We've got everything in there. The garlic is now ready to go. Let's mix this up and see what happens with that peanut butter. So as you notice right away, it starts to emulsify with the soy sauce, the fish sauce, the sriracha. And what that means is these oils in the peanut butter are combining with these liquids now, and the liquids being the soy sauce, that little bit of lime juice we put in there, the fish sauce. And as we look at the texture here, I'd say it's just like a little bit too thick. And so it's almost the same texture as what we started with. So I'm going to add a pinch of water. Always nice just to have a little pinch of water in there. Maybe that was a teaspoon of water just to make sure that we get this texture to a point that we feel good about. And so I really like where we are now. This feels like a really nice texture for glazing our chicken. And we'll just give it a little bit of a taste.
Jealous.
Delicious. We have that nice kind of the peanut forward flavor, but then a little bit of heat from the sriracha. The lime provides that acidity to help balance everything out. And then the soy sauce and the fish sauce are really our salt in this. You notice we've not used a single pinch of salt yet because we're cooking with a lot of fish sauce and soy sauce. That's perfectly seasoned, and I don't need to do anything else to that. We're going to set this aside, and we'll glaze our chicken with it after it comes off the grill. Now for the fun part. Let's break into our salad and start doing all of our knife work for the salad. So we're going to build a green papaya salad. And if you've never had this salad before, most people think of papaya as a fruit that they would eat that's a sweet fruit, but this is a green version. And so basically think of it like a green banana. It's unripe. And so the texture is totally different, the flavor is totally different, and its purpose that you're going to use it for is very different. Papaya, when it's ripe, can be eaten just as a normal fruit. But when we have this nice green papaya, we're going to make this really awesome crunchy salad with it that's going to have, a pretty punchy dressing that's got a little bit of, we got a little bit of tamarind paste here. We have some fish sauce. We're going to put in a little bit of brown sugar, one more garlic clove, some lime, and just a little bit of Thai chili. This Thai chili is optional. It is quite spicy, but for those of you who, we have a couple different peppers here today that we can talk about and show, but if you want to have something a little more mild, use a jalapeno, take out the seeds, and that's going to be an awesome option. This is a Thai long pepper. This one's a little bit less hot, but I like the heat. We're going to go for the bird's eye chili, the Thai chili, and we'll see how spicy it is today. One trick for at home, I do not cut hot chilies without a glove on. And the reason being is I learned this lesson the hard way. I was a young cook, my first job ever, and I cut a whole bunch of hot peppers for a relish that we were making for a dish. And then I went ahead and I touched my face. And for the entire rest of the day, I was in a significant amount of pain, and it really burned, almost like burns the skin when you touch these really hot peppers and then touch your skin. And so I never want that to happen again, and I don't want that to happen to you at home. So I do recommend, if you're working with like really hot chilies, anything that's hotter than a jalapeno, and even a jalapeno can be pretty spicy. I put a glove on because all of these oils and the capsaicin from those peppers, it stays in your skin, and it's actually quite hard to get out. You really got to scrub. And so for the purposes of today, I'm going to glove up so we don't get too spicy. And we're going to build our dressing first in the bowl, and then we'll get all of our salad ingredients on top of that and go from there. So I'm just going to take this Thai chili and cut it down the middle. And for this one, we're going to keep the seeds in. This is, this salad traditionally is very, very spicy, and so we're going to go for the whole chili. And if this comes around to bite me, then so it goes. But we'll try it and see how we feel about the spice level.
Perfect. If your eyes start watering, we can see it from here. We'll let you know.
So I just cut it into 4 pieces, and then I'm going to do that. Excuse me. Same as before. Just come through and mince it as finely as possible. I can already smell it. It smells fantastic. It's got that really nice, almost fruity heat to it. I find that a lot of hot peppers, like habanero, Thai chili, the ají amarillo family of peppers, they're quite spicy. And so we got our chili all minced up here. Let's do the garlic clove, and then we'll get those together into the bowl. So I'm going to do the same thing we've been doing with the garlic, where I start slicing this way, and then I'm going to turn it down onto that cut side so I feel a little more comfortable slicing it into the planks, and then back through one more time into that fine julienne, and then we'll turn it and do that final mince just like that. Perfect. Smells great. Mixing that up with the chili. Delicious. Make sure I get all my garlic off the knife, and then we're going to go back to that scraper, and we're going to get this all into our bowl here, start making our dressing for our salad. And just as before, when we have that garlic on the knife, let's make sure to wipe it off so we don't get any of that garlic residue sitting on our knife long term. So we got just the garlic and the Thai chili in the bowl. Next up, we're going to add in a little bit of brown sugar. This is going to help balance out the dish. We don't want it to be too sour. And so with the amount of lime juice plus the fish sauce and the tamarind paste that we're going to be using, all of those are going to be kind of on the acidic side of the scale. And so I like to add in that pinch of brown sugar, just about a tablespoon, to help mellow out and balance the salad. You know, when you're cooking with a lot of acid, you have to have balance. And so you have to have something that's going to be sweet to help balance that out, and then something that's salty to kind of help pull it all back up. So we're going to have, you know, that little bit of fish sauce, just a pinch of sesame oil, a little bit of tamarind paste here, and then just a tablespoon of water. And that's just going to help us kind of thin all this out and make this really nice texture for our salad. Just going to grab my whisk again. We're just going to give that a quick mixing in the bowl. And then we'll let this all marinate while we build the salad. And so a nice kind of tip and trick is when you're working with raw garlic and raw peppers, if you're going to be mixing them with something that's kind of sour and acidic like lemon or lime juice, I like to let them sit and cure for about 15 minutes. And what this does is it allows us to have that acid in the garlic, the acid in the citrus, kind of help break down some of that raw garlic flavor and have it be a little bit less pungent. And so this goes if you're making something like a hummus and you want to put lemon juice and garlic into it. I will mince my garlic and let it sit in that lemon juice for about 20, 30 minutes and let it cure a little bit. Here with the salt from the fish sauce and then the acid from the lime juice, it's a really great kind of environment for that garlic to sit in and mellow out a little bit while also helping flavor the dressing. And so if you're adverse to that raw garlic flavor, try putting it with some citrus juice first, and it will mellow it out quite a bit when you're making a dish that has, you know, a clove of raw garlic in the dressing or something like that. So give it a try at home and see what you think. Now let's get into the meat of our salad. We're going to be working with our papaya. This is a huge papaya, and we're going to cut this in half. We just do not need to use this entire thing today.
How can you tell when that is ripe?
The papaya will have an entirely different color and texture.
Hey, perfect.
and so right now, it's also about firmness, right? Like when I feel this, like this feels as hard as a cucumber. And that's kind of how it should feel. And then you look on the inside, the flesh of it is very, very firm and almost crisp. And so when we start cutting it, you're going to listen, and we're going to hear, and it's actually going to it's going to sound almost crunchy as we peel it and cut it. So we've got our papaya ready to go. We're going to take a carrot, and this is a big carrot, so we're just going to do just about half of that carrot, should be just fine. And then we got a cucumber as well. We'll do half of our cucumber for our salad. And that seems like a perfect amount. And so I'm actually going to put the chef's knife away, and we're going to go into our santoku, and that'll be the knife that we use for the rest of our knife cuts. First up, just need to do a quick peel on these vegetables. You know, peeler technique is something that is not talked about enough, and while we have a minute, I will show you the best way to peel a vegetable. It's actually not to hold it on its side and peel this direction, but to hold the vegetable in your hand and peel towards yourself. And a chef showed me this probably 13 or 14 years ago. Totally changed my peeling game. And what happens is you're able to kind of look and see how much you're taking off. And so you're not wasting any of the product. We're really just taking that outside layer off. And as you're turning it in your hand, you're able to see where you missed any spots. And this way, we're only taking off just enough so that we have, you know, all of the carrot left to enjoy. Cucumber, I'm going to do a stripe peel. If you've never heard about stripe peeling, it really sounds like what it is. One side, turn it, and we're just going to skip. So we're going to leave a little bit of that cucumber skin on for both crunch, texture, and flavor, and then we'll leave the cucumber just like that. And then the papaya as well, we're just going to go through, and we're going to peel this whole thing. So I'll peel it from the top down. Sometimes the papaya skin's a little bit tough, and you got to give the peeler a little bit of a wiggle. We'll also be able to come back through with our knife. And I think we're actually just going to switch to the knife, having a little trouble there. What we'll do is just take it, and we'll just peel it with the knife, kind of coming right down
So, Nico, why are we changing knives here, even though this one seems to be working gorgeously for
So this
peeling
is, now we're
situation?
using our sentoku. So this sentoku is awesome for vegetables. It's a little bit taller and also a little bit shorter. And so it has that really nice same ergonomic handle. So when I do all of my knife cuts here and I'm doing some rock and chop, this is probably my favorite size and shape knife to use for vegetables. So sentoku, I always think of this as my, almost like a mini vegetable cleaver, and it's my go-to knife for any sort of, mincing whenever I have to do kind of vegetable work with julienning my vegetables. I'm reaching for my sentoku.
Oh, I love this mini, that sort of in between knife.
Little
That's
vegetable
great.
sword,
Yeah.
a little vegetable cleaver. And so this way we are just going to keep taking the skin off of our papaya. And as soon as we get our skin off of the papaya, we're going to start thinking about our chicken. So I'm just going to turn our stove on. Eventually. Okay, there we go. We'll just get that preheating here for a second, and then we'll start cooking our chicken while we do the rest of our knife work, so everything kind of comes together at the same time. Those chicken skewers, we probably want to give them, somewhere between 8 to 10 minutes to cook, and so we'll get it going here and make sure that they cook at the same time as we're making our salad.
What else do you use papaya for, Nico, when you cook?
That's a great question. So for green papaya, I make iterations and versions of this salad. And so the green papaya salad really, this is more of a traditional preparation that we're showing you today, but you could take this in a different direction. I like using a green papaya just as a crunchy vegetable that you can put in many different salads. So if you've never experimented with it before, and if you've never tried it, I think it's a fun vegetable, or rather a fruit to go buy and use in your cooking at home and see how you like it. We'll just peel off a little bit here, just have a taste, kind of tell you about what we're...
I heard that crunch from over here.
Yeah, you can absolutely hear the crunch from there. There's a little bit of fruitiness that comes through. It does have, this is a tropical fruit, and so we do have that kind of note on the palate where it's like, oh, wow, when this is ripe, I can totally see how that's a delicious and sweet fruit. When it is unripe and green, it's a little bit more sour, a little bit more vegetal, and a nice earthy flavor, but it's quite mild, and so it really doesn't have, it's not like an overpowering flavor by any means, and so really delicious. I really enjoy green papaya. Just gonna get our
Patty in our chat has asked, don't the divots in the sentoku help the fruits and vegetables not stick to the knife so much?
They do, yeah. We haven't quite gotten to actually slicing yet, but if we notice that these little divots that we have in the knife here, when we're cutting something, especially something that's starchy, potatoes always come to mind. Knives that have these nice little divots inside of them, it really helps the potato or anything that's starchy not stick to the knife as much. So when we're cutting, the product stays on the cutting board as opposed to kind of travels with us. And so I really like the sentoku for that as well, because when we're cutting our vegetables, we want to, continue to have some speed and go through it. And so I like having that kind of capability. So next thing I'm going to do here is I got to get my seeds out of the papaya. So you see it has all these little tiny seeds inside. So I'm just going to scrape those into the compost.
Ah, yes. For those in the chat wondering if this was seedless,
no. It is a seeded fruit for sure. You can take the back of a spoon and just scrape them out, or in this case, these ones are pretty small, and I was just able to use my hand to scrape them right into the compost. So let's do that with our second side, and then we'll get into our knife work here. So we get our pan preheated here, and I'm going to get my skewers into the pan so we can start cooking this chicken and do our knife work simultaneously. I just let this pan heat up for a few minutes, just put my hand over it, feel a little bit of heat coming off of it, so I think we're ready to start searing our chicken.
Any oil in there?
Sorry?
Any oil in there?
No, so we have enough oil in this marinade that I'm not actually going to put any oil into our pan when we cook the chicken satay. I feel good about just kind of letting this go as is. With a grill pan, and when we're grilling in general, I like to, especially on an outdoor grill, you want to utilize as little oil as possible, because what happens when you put an oily piece of protein on the grill, it often flares up. And when I first started cooking, I thought, ooh, flare-ups equal more flavor. Couldn't be further from the truth. Unfortunately, when you burn the oil, you get that really kind of acrid taste that ends up on the chicken. And if you've ever done this with, say, whole chicken thighs on the grill before, and it has gotten a little bit smoky and flaring up, you'll notice that it almost gets like a black residue on the skin of the chicken, or on the skin, or on the surface of the protein. It happens with steak. It'll happen even with fish, and it definitely happens with chicken. But when I'm grilling those, I really try to apply just as much oil as I need, but not so much oil that I'm going to cause it to have flare-ups on the grill. Inside, we don't have to worry about that as much. We're not cooking over open flame, but still, I don't want to flood this pan with a bunch of oil and basically have it get all smoky on us. And so that tablespoon of oil that's in the marinade, I feel good about that, especially when working with a cast iron grill pan. This is a nice, heavy-bottomed pan. And so as it heats up, it's going to really spread the heat out evenly, and I feel good about just putting those in there, letting them start to sear, and then we'll go from there. Just going to put this over in the sink for a minute. And then we can get back to our salad, start doing our knife work. So when we do our papaya, what we want to do is cut this into a julienne. And so we talked earlier about julienne being basically a fancy name for a matchstick. This is a French term. And we're going to do that exact same thing, but we're going to do it all by hand. There's definitely machinery that you can buy that will help you do this for you, slicing things into julienne. But practicing your knife skills, I would say making a salad like this is one of the best ways to practice your knife skills. And so I'm very excited to try it just kind of as is by hand. So take our knife, make sure we're choking up like we talked about, holding it on the blade, got our finger curling right underneath. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that finger guide again, and we're just going to start slicing this into nice thin planks. And so the natural shape of the papaya is rounded, and so as we're working, we're trying to make sure that we're continuing to get kind of nice thin planks cut out of this. And I'll go ahead and I'll cut the whole first half into those planks, and then we'll set it aside. I'm going to cut about half of this second one because I feel like after the first one, I've realized how much this is going to make. And for my amount of dressing, I don't want to overload it. So we'll do a few more cuts here just to show the technique. But really, when I'm slicing in this manner, I'm starting kind of from the back of the fruit, using my finger as a guide, slicing through all the way to the bottom of the cutting board, and as you can see, knife glides right through it, gets us these really nice kind of planks to work with, where then we can set these up and then come through and julienne them. And we're looking for, somewhere around 2 to 3 inch slices for the papaya salad. And so this kind of the half papaya works perfectly as the size, and in terms of the length of these, I feel really good about having, about 3 to 4 inches as the length. I'm going to stack these into little piles. And what this does is it's going to allow us to stack them up and just come back through and slice each one of these. Just before we do that, we're just going to check on our chicken here. Let's just give it a quick look, see how we're doing. Getting a little bit of color, not too much action yet.
How hot is that pan? Are we on medium high?
I have this pretty hot. We're on induction here, but we're working at about an 8 out of 10. And so we're going for a sear. Like, I want to get some good color on this chicken. I want to make sure that we're mimicking the action of a grill. And so we're going to let this keep rolling on number 8 here and make sure that it's nice and hot, getting a good sear. Not quite there yet, so we'll leave them. Going to cook for around 10 minutes, I would say, is awesome. The likely amount of time for these small pieces of chicken.
And we have a question about, as we go back to chopping, about the pressure you're using when cutting with these knives. I do the same thing, Helen. I have a bad habit of pushing really hard because of bad knives in the past.
Yeah.
So I crack my knuckles, and I'm ready to go. What kind of pressure are you using with these?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that because of the nice weight that these knives have, and because of the how sharp they are, I'm really, as you noticed when I was slicing that, I don't have to apply all that much pressure. I think that, you are bringing it down onto the cutting board, but I'm not slamming the knife on the cutting board as I'm chopping here. Gentle is better, and you can always apply a little bit more force if you need to get through something. But I think, especially when we go into what I call the rock and chop, which is where we're going to come through and we're going to actually julienne these really fine into these matchsticks. This is where kind of that gentle touch and practicing those knife skills really comes in handy at home. And so what I like to do is I make sure my pile is kind of all set up, and I use my fingers as that guide again. And then we're going to come through and just make this into some nice, long julienne. And so rock and chop is what I'm doing right here, is where you're kind of working through your vegetable or your fruit, and you're kind of rocking and chopping the knife just like that at the same time. So I'll take my next little pile of papaya, and it's okay if they're not perfectly lined up. At the end of the day, if they were in a big line, that would work too. This is just how to get kind of the nicest and cleanest knife cuts. And if that's really uncomfortable, what you can do is you can kind of come at it from the top, and then each time chop just like that. If that rock and chop is uncomfortable to you, and if you haven't practiced that yet, totally okay. I would say using kind of just the slicing technique, where you're using the fingers as a guide, just as I'm doing now. This is another way that you can absolutely practice these knife skills, but without having to do the fast rock and chop if you're not ready to take that step yet.
Look at
And
those
so
matchsticks.
as we cut, I'm going to start transferring a little bit of this into our dressing just so we don't crowd the cutting board. And so, again, not utilizing the back of our knives, making sure we're using a scraper. Get all that right into the bowl. And let's just check the chicken while we have a
Oh man, I can smell
while we have a moment.
that.
It's starting to smell
from the
really
chat
good. So I'm going to
moderator
flip them
desk.
over.
Oh.
We have good grill marks. I love that. It smells amazing. Really good. Wow. Okay, so all those aromatics are starting to come off the chicken. I'm smelling the ginger. I'm smelling the garlic. That fish sauce, soy sauce combination is just, it's singing in the air. It smells really good in here. Back to the salad. Keep going on our knife work.
Is this the kind of salad you can make ahead of time and like have marinate in the fridge? Is this like a 3-day bring to work lunch salad?
So I would say that you can absolutely make this and have it in batches. I would recommend trying to dress it to order. And the reason being is that I like when the papaya salad has a lot of crunch to it. And what happens when you start to, like say you're gonna put this in the fridge, you're gonna make a big batch of it, what's gonna happen is that all of the veg are gonna start to get a little bit soggy and soft in there. And so you could make kits. And so this is a great meal prep trick, is if you make kits at home, this would be doing all of your knife work, getting it all kind of situated into 3 separate containers, and then make that little batch of dressing 3 different times. And then when you wanna have this as a meal prep lunch throughout the week, or as a dinner even, then you're able to just take and mix what you already have done. So you're doing all the knife work once, but you're really just dressing it 3 different times. And so that's my recommendation for doing if you want to make a larger batch of this. I do like it the day of. It can sit for about, an hour or 2 beforehand, but the crunch and the texture is really what I'm looking for when I'm making a green papaya salad.
Otherwise, it turns into sort of a coleslaw moment, right?
Yeah.
Something a little softer.
All right, papaya is done. Let's move on to our carrot. We're gonna do the exact same thing. And so to start our same process with the carrot, to make it a little bit safer, I'm gonna make 1 slice, maybe 2, and then I'm gonna turn it onto that same edge. And so what we have is the ability to have the carrot really sitting on that flat cut side. And so it makes it a little bit easier for us to come through and cut this into those planks. And so with the carrot, we're gonna try to go just as thin as we did on the papaya. And again, this is all you're doing as best you can at home. And even, when you get to the end of it, it's a little bit hard to get those into really, kind of skinny planks. But as we come through the carrots, we have an opportunity to make them nice and thin. I'm just gonna kind of line these all up, and we'll just come through the carrots as we go here. And you can see none of it's sticking to the santoku. I think it's we're getting a really nice julienne on these, but without having any of the product stick to the knife.
Look at that top down. Oh my gosh. So quick. Oh, this really is a practice recipe. If you want to get some reps in, everybody, with your Schmidt knives, get in here.
Lastly, I am going to cut these one more time. I think that they're quite a bit longer than my papaya, and so I want to make sure everything has the same size. And so I just cut those all in half, and we'll pop those into our bowl. Lastly, the cucumber. I'm just going to turn the stove down a little bit now. We're getting just a little bit of smoke coming off the chicken. We'll check one more time for color, but I'm feeling good about that. We'll let the chicken keep rolling. We'll go to our cucumber. I'm just going to take that top end off, and then we'll do the same thing. We're going to cut that cucumber into those nice planks. And then we'll come back through, cut them into the julienne, and get them into our salad. The cucumber is one that you can kind of do in larger stacks because it's a much softer vegetable, a lot easier to cut, and then this way we can just kind of come right through. Whoop, skin got in the way a little bit. There we go. Chop right through that cucumber. Move on to our second side. Perfect. And then same thing, I'm just going to turn those and cut them right in half so they're the same size as our papaya, and we'll get those into our bowl. So we got our cucumber, we got our papaya, we have all of our lovely dressing in the bottom of there. Next up, we're going to get in on some herbs. I'm going to grab some cilantro here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to chiffonade our cilantro. And so if you've never heard the term chiffonade before, what this means is really just like a nice thin slice through herbs or greens. So you can chiffonade many different, vegetables herbs, etc. But for today, we'll be using our cilantro and our mint as our contenders for our chiffonade. Cilantro stems are not the enemy. I think a lot of people think, oh, I must take all the stem away. We must pick it. I like to just take away kind of the bottom firm parts of the stem, but soft herbs like cilantro, like parsley, and dill even, I use the stems, and I find that it's a really nice kind of crunchy addition with a ton of flavor. If you're throwing them all away, you're just getting rid of flavor, and I really try to use my herbs to their maximum potential, and so that means trying to utilize the stems and the leaves. And so what I'll do is I'm actually going to cut this in half and make this into one little pile. And when I'm chiffonading, this is a large amount to do at one time, and so if you feel uncomfortable with this, do it in 2 separate batches. But what I like to do is I take my knife, and I actually bring the vegetables right up against it, and I'll use the knife to almost tuck the herbs underneath. And this way, I have them all in a really neat pile, and now I'm able to bring the knife through and just do this really nice chiffonade. It's super thin, nice and even, cutting through those stems, cutting through the leaves, very kind of natural. And if you had this sort of just in a big bunch on the table in a bundle, it's way harder to do that. So when I kind of use that technique of tucking underneath, I'll show you again with the mint. But it's one of my favorite ways to, favorite things to talk about when we're talking about cutting herbs is how to have like a really nice chiffonade on those herbs. Use that scraper, get it into the salad. We're just gonna check our chicken one more time here. Let's turn it onto that third side, get a little bit of color going. Make sure we're having kind of caramelization on all sides of the skewers. These are looking gorgeous. They smell amazing. See if we can just kind of line them up so they all stay upright there. Awesome, yeah, sear it on that third side, and then we'll just turn it one more time before we finish. But as it's cooking, the smell is even more amazing. So we'll take some mint leaves here. I'm gonna grab about a half bunch's worth of mint, and mint is an herb that I do take the stems off. And so for this one, we're just gonna quickly pick at least the firm stems from the bottom. Sometimes I'll just take that top, and I'm okay with using that little thin stem at the top of the mint. But those woody stems on the mint I don't like to utilize in really any dish. I think if you're making a marinade, you could utilize that, but for the most part, when I'm working with the mint, I like to pick off the stems. And so this really kind of vibrant mix of the herbs with the cilantro and the mint it's super aromatic, and it also kind of helps keep the salad really light and bright and fresh. Putting herbs in salads is just a technique that we should all be doing more of. I think any salad that you're having at home, if you have fresh herbs in the garden, adding a little bit of into your salad just kind of takes it to the next level, makes it super balanced, and you just get these pops of freshness. And I think that's a really great, in restaurant cooking, it's something we always do, is cooking with herbs, cooking with kind of these pops of acid and herbaceousness. Bring this into your home kitchen and give it a try. Try cooking with some mint, some dill, some parsley, some cilantro, etc. It really can help kind of take your cooking to the next level. So let's talk about that chiffonade one more time. I'm going to just kind of tuck underneath my fingers here. Now I have all of this in like a nice tight bundle. Let's come back through one more time and chiffonade. And as I'm going, I'm kind of working backwards with my other hand as I'm holding it. And you can kind of rebundle if you need to. If the leaves kind of start to come and go on every which way, you can use your left hand or whatever your non-knife hand is to kind of come through and continue to rebundle those herbs as you're chiffonading. And so really nice way to make sure that we get our herbs all chopped evenly so we have the kind of uniform texture throughout our salad. Take that scraper right into our bowl. We can just take this moment to kind of scrape down our work surface just a little bit as we've kind of finished up our knife work.
Do you think green onion would rock in this salad?
I think green onion would be amazing in this salad. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of red onion in the green papaya salad. Yeah. Sometimes there's a little bit of like cherry tomatoes in there, green onions. I think there's a lot of flexibility with this, and it can be taken like many, many different ways. I'm gonna flip that chicken onto the final side. We're definitely getting there. It is almost cooked. Should be done in about 30 seconds, then we'll glaze it and we'll rest it while we finish up our salad. Just gonna give that knife a rinse before we move on. So rinse the herb off of our knife, just gonna take my towel, give that a quick wipe, and that's a nice way kind of as you're cooking, as you're going, making sure we're taking care of our blades, taking care of our knives, nice and clean, put it back on the top of the cutting board, kind of out of the way. So next up, we are gonna finish this salad. I'm gonna put a glove on, and this is we're gonna massage our salad. And so all this raw vegetable, what we need to do is help expose it to that dressing and start to squeeze it. And so I actually get in here and I'm giving like a pretty good squeeze to all of these vegetables. And what this is gonna do is the salt that's in that soy sauce and fish sauce, or excuse me, in the fish sauce, it's gonna help draw out some moisture that's in all of these vegetables and help create a further dressing in the bowl. All of the vegetables that we're working with have a good amount of water content to them, especially cucumbers. If you've ever grated or cut a cucumber before, you know that it's a very watery vegetable, not in a bad way, but in the fact that it's gonna really kind of help create this dressing. And so really taking this and giving it a good squeeze. And so I like to let this marinate, you know, somewhere between 5 minutes and 35 minutes before serving it. And so I think that's really the sweet spot of having the nice texture, but also making sure that the vegetables have softened up a little bit, but not too much. We don't want them to be mushy. We don't want the cucumber to disappear. We want to still have kind of enough, a nice toothsome texture. So I'm just going to give the papaya a little taste. That is delicious.
So I know this is, obviously we're in the cutting edge. This is all about knives here with Schmidt Brothers Cutlery. But this is also about cutting boards, what we cut on. Are we using wood? Are we using plastic? At Shea Nico, at your home? What do you prefer cutting on?
I use a variety of cutting boards. This is a great question. When I'm working with proteins and something like raw chicken, raw fish, I tend to use a plastic cutting board that I can get really soapy and make sure that I'm getting super clean, no bacteria, et cetera, for food safety. But when I'm working with mostly vegetables, I like cutting on wood blocks. I'm a big fan of a nice boost block cutting board. I use a large one at home, and this is kind of what I like to go on. But earlier you noticed that I cut the chicken on a plastic cutting board or a composite cutting board, just because that one, it can go in the dishwasher. We can get, use our sponge or our steel wool on there if we need to clean it. And so I think you can, have a variety of cutting boards in your arsenal that are good for different things. I feel great about our salad. I'm gonna take my plate here and get a little bit of the salad on there so we can finish our dish.
Yeah, it smells insane in the studio.
It smells outstanding. Both the salad plus the chicken cooking at the same time is intoxicating in here. Very delicious. So I'm gonna take a little bit of our salad and we're gonna go right in the middle of the plate. And this is, making a little serving for myself. Of course, if you're doing this family style, you can put more than one serving on the plate. And then we're gonna take our chicken. We're gonna bring it onto just a little kind of a resting, we call this my little resting tray. And resting protein is something that is definitely not discussed enough. And so what we wanna do is let this chicken hang out for, these are small pieces. And so we'll probably wanna let them rest and kind of carry over and finish cooking on the inside, just to make sure that they stay super juicy. And so what that means is pulling it off the heat, letting it rest either on a rack or on another pan or a plate for just 1 or 2 minutes for chicken skewers like this. For a big steak, we might want to let that rest for 5 minutes before we slice into it, so that way we have basically an even cook all the way through. We're cooking chicken all the way, 165. We want to make sure that we cook the chicken all the way through. But for proteins that you're not cooking all the way through, you want to make sure you have that nice kind of rested gradient of the protein. And so, good amount of time for a steak, shorter on the chicken. We'll glaze this and then let this rest for just a moment or two before we plate. But just always something that we should talk about when we talk about improving our home cooking is also utilizing the technique of resting. So we're just gonna glaze this beautiful peanut sauce all over the chicken. Look at that. This is gorgeous. I cannot wait to eat this.
Yeah, this looks fab.
And this is, it's like a light, bright meal. It's wonderful for if you prep this ahead of time, marinate the chicken, do your knife work, and then you can make this meal in about 25 minutes. This is a really nice weekday meal. Awesome for a dinner party too. If you want to do something that's outside in the summertime, fire up the grill, make a really nice crunchy salad. It's a wonderful dish that has a lot of flexibility. And one other thing I wanted to discuss, if you had cooked your chicken a little bit earlier than I did, and maybe it was ready and you weren't ready in your papaya salad, take a little piece of foil. You can just kind of tent it over that chicken. These just came off the heat. That will stay hot for about 5 or 6 minutes, just like that. Today, we don't really need to do that because we're ready to eat right now. But just wanted to show that if you have a little bit of extra time before you eat, utilize resting and putting a piece of foil on top of it, and that'll help keep it, nice and juicy, a little bit steamy under there, and perfect for this dish. So I'm gonna take 2 of my skewers. We're gonna go right on top of our salad. And this is it. We got our chicken satay.
Man.
We got green papaya salad. I forgot one thing. We're gonna garnish with some peanuts here. Peanuts are kind of a key ingredient for our green papaya salad. Very delicious. There we go. let's have a bite. Let's get in there and enjoy. I'm gonna take just one piece of chicken off the skewer. Oh my gosh.
I'm so happy for you.
That is outstanding. That is delicious. The peanut sauce combined with the marinade on the chicken is really excellent. And then when we get a bite of that papaya salad, the herbaceousness, the little bit of acidity from that lime, it is outstanding. Let's have a bite all together. The balance. You know, when we talk about a good meal, when we talk about a good dinner, having a balanced dish is key. A little bit of sweetness, a little bit of acidity, nice crunch, a little bit of heat from that Thai chili. Not too spicy. Works for me. Might be a little too hot for some folks, but I love it. Super delicious. We can't wait for you to make this recipe at home. Mary, anything else in the chat before we sign off?
I love this. Helen is telling us that Nico's "that is outstanding" is her favorite thing. And that, to me, is also my favorite thing. That is totally your catchphrase. I love it.
It is. This is a really delicious salad, and the chicken satay, super nice technique, fun to do inside, outside, you know, kind of feel it out how it works for you in your home kitchen. Thank you so much for joining us today, folks. We love partnering with Schmidt Brothers Cutlery. All of our classes are available on demand. If you haven't caught the rest of the series, you can catch them on demand, the first 4 parts of our Cutting Edge. And our next class is going to be on Thursday, 3/27, 4 p.m. Pacific time. We're doing a date night steak with a Caesar compound butter.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be crazy delicious. I want to eat that right now, but we'll settle for this. Pretty okay. Your Cutting Edge is waiting. Get it today. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everybody.